of the right set of herbs, or simple. I'd like to call that house magic. The little things that you do, like leaving a little bit of milk for the fae, or putting a blessing sign on something that doesn't have spectacular magic, but gives people comfort, and who knows, maybe it does something. He is convinced that it does, so he's not trying to cheat people. But if his convictions are all that right, is an open thing. And he's constantly trying to learn new things, but he has to do that by learning from mostly from other hedge wizards and witches, all the herb gatherers and the people that live in the forests and in the small towns, instead of getting access to other things. He's dressed a little bit more than many of his Elizabeth folk brethren. He has long brown pants, very cheap material, just comfortable, and sleeveless leather tunic. That's very thin leather, basically a leather shirt that he made himself that runs up to his mid-thigh. And the only thing noteworthy about his clothing is probably a blue kind of cloak that is nicer, that he thought he'd give himself something to look more civilized and approachable, because he was also tired of terrorizing people. He's not that terrifying himself. He's rather slender, and he has a narrow face. Two horns go back, one of which is kind of broken off, and he has a pale belly and blue scales with some yellow shimmering on it. And he's terribly curious. That's something he never managed to get rid of, and he can be kind of nosy. Not necessarily recognize when he's asking questions when people said, okay, good day, be gone.
But one further question.
Just one further question.
Perfect.
Why do you and that man look so strange at each other?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And that is Lulu.
You, through promise of payment, curiosity, or your own purposes, have found yourself at Survey Site 801. The site is home to 15 scholars, arcanists, and surveyors, all mounting expeditions into the twisted forest of tangled trees. From their simple canvas tents and hastily constructed wooden shacks, they are charged with assessing whether the forest, abandoned for nearly 100 years now, is ready to be tamed, utilized, and inhabited once again. Suddenly, there is a shout from the wooden palisade wall. "Open the gate!" The few sellswords left to defend the camp draw weapons, ready for anything as the gates are pulled open. Two Kushi, loyal fey hounds that look like dogs, limp into the encampment. One of the mercenaries inspects the Kushi's collar and cries out, "They're Aloris Hildebanes! There's no sign of the Arcanist!" Your two characters, Lulu and Brady, are sitting at a table, waist-high, heavy, carved from the wood of this forest, and the two of you are playing a simple game of cards, as you're wont to do to pass the time. Here in the encampment, there are dozens of sellswords at any given time, but they filter out with these arcanists and surveyors throughout the day. Sometimes there'll be as many as 25 here, sometimes there'll be as few as 5 or 6. Right now, there are probably 8 or 9. Many of the arcanists and surveyors have returned from their morning escapades and have since started doing their research and writing their notes in full. I would like to know, what is your relationship with each other? You can make this up completely on the spot, but it would be interesting to know if there's any hostility, friendship, or anything else between your two characters.
Well, that's an excellent question. I think we are quite different.
Though we missed Brady's introduction, the two of you have had probably no issues with the law here, and I put law in big quotation marks. No one has had a problem with either of you directly, but the two of you, this grizzled marine / mercenary veteran and this lizard folk hedge wizard, the two of you are very different, so it would be interesting to hear. Martin, what do you think your relationship would be? How would Lulu see Brady?
Oh, he will be... Lulu is fascinated. He's very different than the people he's met before. Although he's probably here in the hope of learning some magic, then if there's a lot of Arcanists and forests, that sounds like his gig. So that's something that probably lured him here. He probably zeroed on the one person that is not what he's experienced about. And will probably have approached him rather friendly, cautiously, and very curious.
And how would Brady feel about Lulu?
I think Brady would be drawn to the curiosity because kind of views life through a transactional kind of lens, thinking here's somebody who might be looking for something from me, somebody who might someday throw me a job, somebody who might need somebody a little bit more worldly by his side at some point. So I imagine I kind of have a picture of them sitting there playing cards because Brady, of course, a practiced card player. I'm sure maybe for Lolo it's a little new. Staring him down in the face, going, I know you asked me to teach you how to play, but I think you might be a natural at this. You trogs is hard to read. I can't get your tell.
I never thought I would be good at any of this. This is very exciting and so fascinating. And he's terribly easy to read because if he has a good set, his tail is going to wave around like crazy. And if you're paying a little bit attention, it's fairly obvious. And he doesn't realize that at all.
Brady's used to studying his opponent's face, so he's looking for little ticks in the lips, little wrinkle in the nose. But he can't find that because doesn't have it.
Completely ignoring the obvious wish-wash behind him. That is perfect.
Reading his facial expression should be hard because there is some movement, but it's probably not what he's used to or expect to see. And from the facial expression, he's probably very focused, just like a lizard would be when they focus on something that they're interested in, not moving at all so they don't stir them up. I also think even though he's smart, he probably is not getting a good hold of the game. He understands the rules, but that doesn't make you a good player necessarily.
So in a sense, Lulu would be more adept at counting the cards and knowing the odds of pulling the right thing than reading his opponent, would you say?
Absolutely. He would have to rely on exactly counting cards, having an idea what the rules say, but he would be a terrible poker player.
The two of you, as you're reading each other and discussing the rules of this poker game, hear the telltale of armor approaching. When you look up, you see a tall half-elven woman wearing slate gray metal plate armor. This imposing woman in this suit of polished plate armor approaches you, rubbing the stubble atop her shapely head with her gauntleted fist. She says, "You lot, make yourselves ready. I need you to seek out one of the lead Arcanists that's gone missing. Name's Eloris Hildebane. The two of you know this woman by reputation and the short interactions you've had with her over your time here at Survey Site 801. You know that this is Lady Burl Harker. She is the chief security officer here and in charge of basically everyone, including the Arcanists and the surveyors. Her word is the closest thing to law here. One of the guards following behind her approaches with a hound as big as a mastiff on a leash and passes the leash to Lady Harker. Lady Harker pulls this Kushi in front of her, this fey hound, and says, "The other Kushi is too injured to travel, but this one seems more than eager to go." The cream-colored dog is pulling hard at the leash closed in her fist towards the closed gate of the encampment. "Take it. Find Hildebane and Lucatus, his escort, and bring them back. Alive or dead, I don't care. Understood?" she says to you.
You don't care? Would you not prefer we bring them alive?
If they're dead, there's nothing that I can do about it. But bring them back regardless.
So Brady kind of looks hard for the dog, then behind him to see if there's might be somebody else that she might be speaking to over his shoulder, and then turns back, sort of surprised, looks at Lulo and, "Well, you sure you got the right? You sure that you got the right two here? Okay. Where did Hildebane get off to then?"
She raises a slender eyebrow and says, "I've no clue where the Arcanist was going today. You know his reputation, at least. He's something of a wild card." She reaches into her belt, seeing your hesitation, Brady. She reaches into her belt and pulls out a pair of amber-colored gauntlets and slaps them down on the table in front of you and says, "Consider this your stipend. I need that Arcanist back." She passes Lulu the end of the leash with the Kushi on it and turns as a guard is speaking into her ear and hurries off to some other business. You see her talking about the marshes to the west, something else biting into her time. And the two of you are left at this table with this Kushi pulling rather hard against its leash towards the gate.
Lulu
So
will
Brady picks
look...
up,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm getting some lag here.
You're cutting in and out now, my friend Daryl. Can you maybe speak up or perhaps turn down the...
Sorry.
I understand.
Yeah.
We are all limited by our technology.
Yeah, the technology is not cooperating with me today, and I'm catching a little bit of lag on my side. I was going to say I got some lag when I started speaking. I realized you'd started, so go ahead and if you want to go ahead.
Martin, what was Lulu doing?
First, it would look after the guard and shout after her, "Of course, highest guard person," stumbling over his words, and then looking cluelessly at Brady, saying, "Well, we can find them in the forest." And then, "Stop tugging at me," pulling the dog a little bit closer. Well, if he can, it depends on how strong the dog is, because he's not terribly weak, but he's not exactly really the muscle here at the table.
There is a natural size to all lizard folk, which you do possess. And when you tug at this Kushi's leash, it takes a few steps directly backwards and sits as though trained very well. But it does whimper through its puffy, cream-colored snout.
Oh yeah, looks like you're a natural dog handler too. He picks up one of the gauntlets and says, "I guess we can give her a hand then." She gave up.
I think so. I think this forest is fascinating. We should definitely explore it. And yes, you'll learn a thing or two about dogs if you approach a farmhouse and they don't know if they like you. Fortunately, this dog seems to like us. So, shall we go?
Brady, when you pick up this gauntlet, you are aware of what it is. This is an uncommon, wondrous item, a magical gauntlet, called a root shape gauntlet. Essentially, what this gauntlet does, since I cannot hand you the sheet, you can produce from a tree, vine, or roots a weapon of your choice once per day, made of that tree, root, or whatever. It has the same exact stats as a normal weapon, except if you roll a natural 1, it shatters. You can use the gauntlet, we'll say, 3 times per day for our purposes. In case you need any elaborate or strange item, you can check with me, we can do a simple check and see if you can make it using these gauntlets. The both of you are also aware that Hildebane's tent resides in this encampment, and there is no such thing as security here. So if you would like to check there as to his whereabouts, you can do that as well. But his reputation, as Harker has suggested, is one of aloofness. He, much like Lulu, is very dangerously curious. Most of the time, he will lie, cheat, or steal if it means he can have his curiosity slaked even for 1 day. But you do know that he does sleep, as all do, in this encampment.
Well, we should look if we find something for the dog to sniff. Dog sniff, I know that. So, we should check out his tent.
Oh, you think if we can find like his underthing or something, this dog's going to be able to track him down?
Exactly. I wanted to throw in when I'm seeing these, that is Lulu, that is not me looking for words, which is reasonable to assume because also I'm not a native speaker. But I would not be using it this excessively.
I do not think that we have to tell you that you are a perfect native speaker. Your English is superior to ours. Don't be concerned at all. So the two of you are going to his tent?
Yeah.
Okay. When you arrive, the white boxy tent that has been Hildebane's home for nearly a year is completely stuffed with journals, papers, sketches, and jars of various samples taken from the forest. More than any other surveyor in the camp, Hildebane seems invested in learning about tangled trees, from root to branch. A desk covered in trinkets and loose papers sits alone opposite a well-made cot. Other than a peculiar fur blanket, boxes of samples, and a set of exceedingly well-made bedclothes hanging from the central tent pole, the tent is sparsely decorated, save for all the papers and journals. Imagine, if you will, the house of a hoarder, but replace everything with journals, papers, pens, inks, and quills. This whole place is brimming, overstuffed with such things. The Kushi, when it is in here, lazily kind of wanders, though still on the leash in your hand, underneath the desk on one side and curls up in a bunch of papers that are already pre-flattened as though this is its sleeping spot, and it whimpers.
I pat it a little bit.
I think this dog might have been in here before.
You pet this Kushi, and it seems to calm considerably, having any kind of warmth given to it. And the two of you know that Kushi in this region are collected by these Arcanists and surveyors very often. They're very loving companions, and they can help pick and choose easy paths through the forest, just naturally acclimated to this environment.
Well, I've already decided I'm going to keep this one, but otherwise I'll look around in dismay. Well, I had hoped maybe he had some helpful spell work lying around, but this looks just like paper and paper writing down boring things about this forest.
When you start to shuffle around the papers on the desk with your clawed hand, you see that he does have basically an expedition plan for the day on top of most of the other papers, if you would like to peruse through that.
Absolutely. If I don't get distracted, I'll focus in on that.
What is Brady doing in this meantime?
So Brady looks at the papers and anything written with kind of dismay. That smacks of effort. Starts looking at the fur blanket, looking at the bedclothes, see if there's anything interesting about those. Maybe if they might be something that a dog could get a scent from.
You are under the impression, as they're still slightly damp from the morning, that Hildebane probably wore the bedclothes this morning. They would be fresh with his scent. They don't seem cleaned yet. When you go over to the bed and you start fiddling with this blanket, the fur blanket seems to be made of a bearskin. It's very large, actually. Big enough to wrap fully around Lulu with no problem. But when you touch it and begin to fiddle with it, it makes very little noise, almost none at all. And you are under the impression that it may be more peculiar than you think. Can you roll me an Arcana check, please?
I can't. Are we using Discord for rolling?
No, you can roll physical dice or online dice, whatever you want.
Actually, just let me grab a die. Believe it or not, I didn't think to bring a die.
It's perfectly fine.
Well, it is drop the die, so...
Sometimes I get spoiled because the top drawer of my desk is just dice and dice trays.
Oh, that's very, very nice. I have
to
go on the ground here.
I don't have to go far to find a die around here. So I rolled an 11, and for an Arcana check, that's a 10.
A 10 is enough. You have heard of these around the encampment, mainly this particular one, as it's the only one here. People crave to steal this blanket because it is called an Embracer's Fur Blanket. When you, or up to 2 creatures, are beneath it, no sound goes through the blanket, and it maintains a constant, comfortable temperature throughout the night. People have whispered about taking this or bartering for it, but it seems to be Hildebane's absolute favorite item in his possession and the entire encampment. Beyond his dogs, beyond his wand, beyond anything else he owns, this blanket is primary among the things that he cherishes the most, and everyone has been too frightened of the spellcaster to try and take it from him.
So Brady kind of picks it up. Oh, I've heard of this. I think this is exactly the type of thing we're looking for, ain't it? It's probably got his scent all through it. We better put that in a pack and take it with us.
As Brady starts speaking and lifts the blanket to show you, his voice almost trails away like he's hundreds of feet from you, just from raising the blanket, let alone covering himself with it. When he lowers it again, his voice returns to normal volume.
I think you're right. It is full of his scent for sure, but this is odd.
Lulu, can you please make me an intelligence nature check as you're looking through these notes?
Right. That is a 7.
A 7. So you only glean the information that you can understand in basic common written here, not the side notes or any of his particular crazy shorthand. You know that his idea is to travel northwest from the encampment to explore a region of the forest that's home to redwood and ironwood trees.
Is there something special about redwood or ironwood trees that Lulu would be or could be aware of?
The only thing that stands out to you is that redwood and ironwood trees are rare in the forest. They only grow in one certain region, which you're aware of the general direction toward. And they're easy to spot. They're gargantuan trees. 10 people, arms outstretched, can barely reach around ironwood or redwood trees. So the fact that he's going there is an easy way to pick out where he would be in this massive, massive forest. So that's great news. You also see that he has a general picture drawn in the corner in his own stylish sketchings of a man, a mercenary. The two of you may have had deals with Lucatus in the past, but you know that it is a sketch of the mercenary polishing his 2 short swords somewhere in this tent. You kind of hold the picture in front of you and turn until you find the corner and the box that is actually in the picture. You see Lucatus sitting there looking unhappy back at the Arcanist. Past that, there's nothing that you can glean from this paper. It's all written in gibberish shorthand and talking about aspects of the forest you may not be familiar with yet.
I'll take it anyway, just in case I have to check it out. Probably do the lizardy tongue lick to get the... I'm not going to try to search things out by scent, but you would to get someone more close to you, lick it a little bit to see. Yeah.
Why not? Roll me a perception check. I love the idea, personally.
Oh, okay.
Tasting
that is
the air.
The 12.
A 12. So what you do know from this tasting of the air is that there are 2 very diverging kind of scents here. In the terms of taste, one would smell and taste clean, like very clean washed flesh. The small kind of saltiness of sweat, and that's it. It's almost too clean. The other has this bombastic floral taste to it, like open flowers in a vase almost. And you can taste it not on the paper, but near and around the box where you saw Lucatus sitting earlier. So that kind of hammers into your mind who these people are. This almost completely blank slate in terms of the Arcanist and this floral, bombastic, showy mercenary.
Yeah.
I would also like to give you inspiration for playing into Lulu's tasting of the air. I really like that.
Thank you. Well, these are very, very different people. I am not sure about this Arcanist, but I suppose we have to find him and all the notes he might have made.
So Brady's kind of watching this spectacle, the tongue flickering in the air. First he thinks it's kind of something of a rude gesture, then he kind of figures out that it must be some sort of lizard thing that goes, are there flies in here or something? Brady's going to look around, because gathering that we're going on a trip, he's going to look around to see if there's anything that looks like it might be, because it looks like this dog normally lives here. Is there anything that looks like It could be food or even treats for the dog.
Yes. You also know that should the two of you need any standard equipment for your journey, there are merchants and trade and barter here. All the Arcanists kind of collect little knickknacks and things, especially things that are useful in the forest, and sell them back and forth for notes, favors, tasks, gold, kind of anything like that. So if you require anything from the Player's Handbook Chapter 5, you can find it here. In terms of food for the Kushi, you know that they generally eat raw meat in this area, freshly cut raw meat, but you can find underneath the bed a kind of stoppered jar with this big cork stopper in it, and inside it seems to be little round brown biscuits you believe to be dog treats. And I would like to award you inspiration for finding the dog treats.
I would not have thought of that.
The Kushi sits up, its ears perk, and it looks at you, Brady.
Brady picks up the treats, gives them a little shake, opens it, smell that they smell like they're edible.
Yeah, it smells like a combination of fish, bone meal, meat. They don't smell inherently bad. They're just very pungent, very strong.
So it's a little jolt back as he smells that. Pick one out. Looks to the dog. I'm sure the dog's salivating, but he gives it a little nibble himself just to see what it tastes like.
It tastes like a stale, kind of older meat stew. It is not inherently unpleasant, as most dog treats are, but it does have that packy kind of road cake consistency that's probably not very pleasant. But it's not bad. You could probably eat them if it came to it.
Wish I could say it was the worst thing I've ever eaten. Then he'll throw the treat down for the dog and stopper up the bottle and put that in his pack. In fact, he'll wrap it in the he'll wrap it in the blanket and put that in the pack, and then he'll grab the bedclothes and say, "I think you already know what this bloke smells like, but maybe a little refresher, huh?" And he'll sort of hold that up to the dog.
The Kushi flattens itself on the ground and kind of swats this treat back and forth for a moment, and then pounces on it and eats it happily. And when you hold down the bedclothes, it kind of has this connection. It understands what you're suggesting a little bit easier than you would imagine normal dogs would. Not just its training, but it seems to have a higher mental capacity than most mastiffs. And it starts sniffing the clothes and restlessly kind of starts to yowl at you. It again begins pulling on the leash pretty hard towards the front gate.
I'll probably stumble because I didn't expect that immediately. Shall we then?
Yeah, I think our friend here wants to get on, so let's get a move on then.
Very well.
Having found adequate scent for this Kushi, when the gates are opened for you, it is no big thing. They open the gates if you wish to leave. It's beyond their capacity to care. But once you're out, the Kushi almost pulls you along the path, straight toward the direction that Lulu is aware these redwoods grow in this massive overgrown forest. Tangled trees is not a natural forest. Something about it has always made it overgrown beyond what nature would usually deem appropriate. That's part of why it's been so difficult to survey the region, is it's almost malicious in nature. This strange twisting roots, low branches that swat and are more thorny than they should be. It's hard to pick through this forest. Luckily, since you're setting out from Survey Site 801, for 12 miles in every direction, there have been paths cut through the forest and salted to not overgrow so rapidly. Every time an expedition goes out, People trim more of the forest back to try and make it safer for people as they venture further and further into the forest. The first 12 miles, you go along these predetermined, open, safe paths. But in that time, though it's relatively easy and been cleared of dangerous plants, the sun begins to set as you left more than halfway into the day. You find yourself now in a position. Do you push on into the darkness to go towards the Arcanist camp, or do you make camp yourselves here in the forest and wait until daybreak?
Thinking back to the days that we spent in the camp before, have there been any mentions about the forest being worse at night?
Yes. Inherently, this place is maze-like and covered in brambles, dangerous flora and fauna. It's not a hospitable place. Though you're at the very edge of the secured portion of the forest, with all these paths carved out and things, it's still not without risk to push on at night. And it's still not without risk to camp here, to be honest.
Yeah.
So there are risks to both.
Well, what do you think, Brady? I do not see all that well in the night.
Me neither. I just feel like if we push on, we'll be walking in circles before we know it, and the trail will probably grow up back behind us. How does the dog seem to be reacting? Is it anxious to keep going? Like it got something it's close, or?
It does not seem as though the scent is close, though it does still pull and is a little anxious. It's also been one hell of a day, and you can see that the Kushi is more cowed and more accustomed to the two of you at this point. It's been several hours you've been walking in relative safety, and by this point you've fed it a few treats, you've given it a few pets. It's calmed down considerably, and it has this singular mentality. But should you sleep, it would more than likely stay in the camp and sleep with you. It doesn't seem to be yowling and pulling, trying to get away from you yet.
Okay. How cold is it where we are? Is it necessary to build a fire, or?
It's in the subtropics here, but due to the density of the forest and the high altitude, at night it does get relatively cold. You believe you may not need a fire, especially since you have brought that blanket with you, and it can keep the two of you relatively comfortable throughout the night.
Yeah, well, I was thinking sort of one of us can take watch while the other one uses the blanket.
Yeah.
But whoever's got watch may fire that. I don't know, but
I don't.
is that?
I think a fire might attract attention. So maybe whoever is being on guard cuddles under the blanket with the Kushi. It's probably also warm. And I can do a little thing here to keep us a little bit more safe. And I'm going to, if I can, ritualize alarm around the camp.
Absolutely. The two of you... No, go ahead.
I mean, Hatch Wizard always camping in the forest has probably alarm always available. So I'm going to put that up around the camp and have an audible alarm, something that is pinging.
Perfect. Maybe the sound of two pots being banged together, something that couldn't be copied by the forest. I love it. Can the both of you please make me wisdom survival checks, and you each get advantage for your spell and your previous choices up to this point.
Hey, oh, by the way, if we're settling down, I'm also going to use mold earth to make it a little bit more comfortable to lie down.
Oh, that's perfect. I love it.
So Brady will be watching Lulu do these things because I'm just imagining how he does it with the kind of house magic he described, and it's like, get away this way about you. But whatever makes you comfortable, eh, mate?
It is just better like this, and he's dragging things from his component pouch, and it's probably a couple of berries that he's waving around, and it's all a little bit more dramatic than it necessarily needs to be, and place down the perimeter. Would you like the first watch, or would you like the second watch?
I'll take the first watch. I'm getting in my chili, and you being cold-blooded and all, I'm sure it's fine for you. Brady at this point has out part of his rations, eating sort of a trail mix. He's the frugal type, so he doesn't.
Oh no, you froze.
Doesn't need too much to eat. But in terms of survival, oh, sorry.
It's okay. I think we're caught up now.
My back?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah.
We heard you. It was just blocked for a second.
Yeah, sorry. Tech is not for me tonight. The last thing I said was in terms of the survival roll, I managed 50.
15. And what about Lulu?
23.
23. Very nice. The two of you have made an exceptional encampment for the night, given the spontaneity of it. There are no problems as you go through this night. The Kushi stays relatively quiet. It seems utterly exhausted from its trek back to the encampment and now back out into the forest, and it barely even moves throughout the night other than reposition itself as the two of you exchange watch. As the sun begins to crest the horizon, and the sky is in this overcast blue haze, just enough light cuts through that you can begin to see. You wrap up your encampment, put all of your things back away, and set back off. The Kushi begins to grow a little more restless several miles later as you cut through the forest. It begins to pull a little faster than you're comfortable with, and you have to kind of slow it down and say heel a few times. Eventually, it cuts straight through some overgrown forest, and the two of you have to stamp and pull and prod to keep it from losing you under brush and roots. Though the two of you have made exceptional progress in making this Kushi comfortable with you and friendly, it does not seem to pull away from you. When you reach a clearing, a very short distance from where the Kushi tries to lose you through the roots, you see a large canvas tent is ripped apart, and what remains of a hand-pulled cart lies completely ruined and destroyed nearby. A huge insect-like creature with interlocking plates along its flat back effortlessly scrapes away boards, boxes, and other debris, sticking its head down to eat exposed scraps of food and cloth. This thing is massive. You're more than a bow shot away from it, and it dwarfs what remains of this encampment. Easily 60, 70 feet long, this huge centipede-like creature. Its body is crisscrossed in seeping wounds and scorch marks. You see that several of its legs on one side of its angular flat body are hacked apart, making its otherwise smooth movements scuttered and lurching to one side. You're nearly 300 feet away when you see this happening, as the overgrown short forest gives way to these massive trees that stretch overhead. It does not seem to have noticed you at this distance, but even so far away, its size inspires awe. What do the two of you do?
First I recoil. Ugh. They did not tell me this forest has these large bugs and creatures in it. Do you think it ate the Arcanist?
Well, it doesn't look like whoever made this camp got as lucky as we did last night. Made it. Looks like it's been in a scrap, this one. I don't think I'm gonna get close enough to figure out exactly what happened, though.
Yeah, not while this thing is around. Like my lips where they are.
Has Brady ever heard of anything like this before?
Make me a nature check, please. The both of you can, if you would wish.
That is nature?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I rolled I got a 19.
Got a 6. I didn't hear of it, I think.
You have never heard of such things, Lulu, this huge isopod. Such a thing you imagine in the bottom of the sea, not crawling around in some forest like this. But Brady, a little more personable and a little more reserved in your interactions with people, you've heard of these creatures before. And this is why many expeditions to the Redwoods are only taken by people as crazy as Hildebane and his guard. This is a redwood crawler. These creatures crawl up these enormous trees like ironwoods and redwoods and are ambush predators of a sort. They fall upon fauna and various flora and basically pick the forest clean in and among the redwoods. They're not inherently dangerous. Most of the time they steer clear of things with fire and that speak. They tend to like to eat smaller creatures and plants. But you do know, with your exceptionally high roll, that they're extremely territorial when they have a clutch nearby, eggs or a nest. It is your understanding, just from seeing this creature so pissed off and eating this encampment, more than likely it has a clutch or a nest nearby.
So I heard of these things around a camp. I thought they were pulling my leg with it. Something to scare you into, not playing your cards right. But they call them the redwood crawlers. They fall down out of trees, but they don't normally attack folks unless they threatened or their young'uns have threatened.
They fall off of trees? I wish you hadn't told me that.
You take this moment, Lulu, to kind of look up at these redwoods, and like your memory said, these trees are several hundred feet around, and they stretch up almost so far that it's unimaginable you would ever need a tree so big. Imagining this thing clinging to the side of it would probably be unsettling at the very least.
Yes, I'm very glad that I don't have hot blood. Is there any sign of people still in the camp? Now, I'm assuming they would be dead people, but still people.
Why don't you make me either an intelligence investigation, or a wisdom perception check? Your choice.
I think this is more perception for me.
Roll that, or?
You can roll one as well, yeah.
14 for me.
19.
The both of you, from this vantage point, assuming you keep the Kushi under control and quiet. This creature does not seem to be primevally aware of anything. It seems to be rather dull-witted and intent on just eating something and tearing apart this encampment in some kind of bestial rage. Looking through here, you can see that there are a great deal of items strewn about in the encampment, but it doesn't seem like there would be more than for 2 people. It doesn't seem lavishly appointed for several guards. It's perhaps just Hildebane and Lucatus that were here. You see that there are chests, probably for various equipment, kind of left, thrown to the side where this cart was destroyed. You do not see any bodies, though you do see quite a bit of blood here and there. And Brady, you actually see, high above the 2 of you, in the lowest branches of these redwoods that stretch high overhead, a scrap of blue cloth tied delicately around a branch, blowing in the breeze. There is no way it was blown up there by happenstance. Someone tied it, you are certain.
So Brady squints his eyes a little, sniffs. Well, that's an odd thing. Someone's gone and tied a little scrap of cloth there to that tree. Maybe they left the trail then.
Lulu, did you roll survival or perception?
I rolled perception.
Perception. So the both of you also notice, once your eyes are affixed to this blue scrap of cloth, that beneath it, through the underbrush and overgrown portions of the forest, cutting through these trees, there's another trail, huge and bisected by what looks like spears or swaths with a scythe. And the 2 of you believe there may have been another one of these creatures following that trail that leads towards where the blue scrap of cloth is tied. It looks like there were 2 of them in this area, and only one remained. The other went into the forest.
So reluctant as I am to follow one of these things, I am afraid it might have followed Hildebrand and his flowery friend deeper into the forest.
Well, that's good. We just gotta find a 90-foot bug to find this guy.
In which direction does the Mushi go at the moment?
The Kushi is...
Oh, Kushi.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Sorry.
The Kushi is cowed a little bit at the sight of this giant creature, and you're under the impression, the 2 of you having spent a great deal of time with it at this point, this may have been what injured its companion, the other Kushi that came back to town injured. You see it kind of snarling a bit, but it's also cowed and kind of terrified. And it sniffs the air every once in a while, but until you get closer, one way or the other, it doesn't seem to have a particular nose for the direction the Arcanist went.
Brady, if we want to rely on our 4-legged friend here, I am reluctant to go closer to that camp, but as the Arcanist is not in there, if we go around it at some point, his trail must pick up again. And if he's in there, we can just wait before the thing leaves, because he's the gunner anyway.
Well, somebody tied that cloth to that tree.
Yeah. So why don't we?
Sorry.
Yeah. Then why don't we go over there and see if the Kushi picks up a new trail? And even if it doesn't, I agree with you. We should look at this, especially as it just takes him away from this large creature here. Yeah, let's just leave. Towards that, but leave.
So you're suggesting we take the long way around then?
Yeah, I don't want to go through the camp. Did you want to go through the camp?
Do I want to give a how do you do to that thing? I don't think so, mate.
Yeah, yeah, let's get around. Why don't we?
So, as I've said before, the forest here is almost split, like a wound through it, where these short trees give way to these very, very tall ones. And between the two is relatively just overbrush, covered in shadows from these enormous trees. It is not very difficult. You do not even need to roll a stealth check to keep your distance and cut around in a half-moon shape, avoiding the camp to where that scrap of cloth is.
For a second, I thought you were going to say, "Oh, there's only enough place."
No, you have to. No, I'm not that kind of DM. I wrote specifically in here that it is not a problem to go around. The two of you cut through this underbrush and through these shorter trees until you get back around to the redwoods and you see that scrap of cloth tied above you. When you get here, the Kushi bails that it has the scent. And to your relief and the dropping of your guts, the two of you hear the redwood crawler several hundred feet behind you go up a tree, frightened of the sound that it just heard. Branches rip away and fall, and you hear the as they fall through the trees, and then it goes dead quiet again. Even the birds that were startled go quiet once more. The Kushi, however, is nose up in the air, pulling against the leash deeper into the forest. Standing here, the camera situated behind the two of your characters, you see a swath of destruction through this underbrush, through these trees. One of these creatures has thrown all haste in trampling through the forest after something. Lulu, being a storied spellcaster yourself, you do know that it's possible that Hildebane could have physically taken flight to escape this ambush creature that tried to follow it. That's probably the only thing that makes sense to the two of you of how this got tied in the branch above your heads.
Well, I was, Brady, at first I thought maybe it was a mage hand that tied it, but it is kind of odd that he would take the time to tie something up in the air while he's chased by a giant monster, so I wonder if he took flight. That is something I definitely need to learn, but I hope he took his friend with him.
So Brady will look back at the camp, almost like it almost seems inviting compared now without the crawler in it, compared to the swath of destruction in front of him. And as Lola mentioned flight, Brady just kind of absently say, "Oh yeah, that's a neat trick, Dad. Yeah." So you think he actually flew out of here? I might even be able to fly if I saw one of those things bearing down on me.
It is a reasonable assumption, but it doesn't explain why he didn't fly back to camp. Well, we'll see. We'll just follow cautiously. The crawler behind us seemed to have left. Do you want to go back there and look? I don't necessarily, but maybe you do want to.
So Brady was almost like he was half expecting that Lula was going to say that. Just kind of like it's like somebody punched him below the belt a little bit. Like, oh, you really think there's any clues back there? I mean, mommy or daddy or whatever that was did a pretty good number there.
How about we check later there and go here first?
Well, I wasn't gonna say anything, but we got the blanket, right?
Yeah.
Everything nice
Yeah.
and quiet. I mean, if one of us snuck in with that on us, at least if the bugs pop up again, we can maybe hide. Though maybe we look
Well-
like the kind of nice furry thing they eat too. I don't know.
Why don't we look first for the Arcanist, and if we find him, then maybe we don't need to look at the camp anymore. And if we don't find him, we can still go back.
So Brady looks the other direction at the path of destruction, and similarly looks like somebody just punched him below the belt.
Brady, when you look out through this path of crushed foliage through the woods, you actually see, because I believe your passive perception is 14 or higher, right?
Yes, 14.
Perfect. You see about 100 feet.
No, yeah.
About 100 feet past the blue scrap tied in the tree above you is another. Past that you can't see, but you know there's at least one more that direction.
So Brady will point down the path, say, "Oi, looks like they're leaving a path for us."
No. Well, that's
Nice of them to take the time while one of these things was coming after them.
let's have a look. By the way, in German, we would call that choice between cholera or the plague. So let's cautiously continue and maybe stay in the underbrush a little bit,
Off the trail.
in the shadows, off the trail.
Makes sense.
See if maybe move forward stealthily rather than at
Why
full
don't the
speed.
two of you
since,
go ahead and make me a stealth check? I will make one for the Kushi. The Kushi rolled an 18. What was that, Daryl? You kind of cut out for us.
It's a 14.
14?
13.
13. Lulu.
A 7.
7.
At the
So-
moment, I'm imagining the Kushi dragging me, and I'm getting the twigs slapping in my face.
Ah! The two of you continue off the trail a little ways. A little bit more than a mile, you follow it, carved through the trees. It cuts left sometimes and right sometimes, but primarily it goes more or less in a straight line, just around some of these larger trees. The whole time, every few hundred feet, you see a blue scrap of cloth. 100 more feet, another. Eventually, this trail leads to a beetle palm tree. Beetle palms, the two of you are aware of, are just giant, kind of flowery, seepy trees that are very tall, and they grow in and around redwood forests. Very, very broad. From the top down, they look like a beetle with its legs sprayed from these giant limbs that kind of come out. This beetle palm is long since dead. Seems to have been eaten by termites. Parts of the bark kind of fall away as you look at the top of it. Near the center of this beetle palm and down to the ground, parts of it have been flayed away as though something tried to crawl up this crumbling tree and failed to do so. Piles of broken parts of the tree pile up around the bottom where the roots are. From here, another path of crushed foliage leads further northwest, away from these larger redwood trees and into the more densely packed overgrowth. You see it crashed through some of the trees or at odd angles where it's broken, and this thing seems to have went that direction. Hanging 80 feet over your heads from the end of one of these large beetle palm branches, you see a tan knapsack swaying in the wind. And periodically, from that knapsack, things fall out. Scraps of paper, a magnifying glass you see falls and crashes into the roots and branches of this tree. So northwest, the trail continues. Right above your heads is a tan knapsack caught on a branch.
We need to investigate this knapsack.
Well, I suppose we could try climbing up there. Haven't done enough in a number on the thing that we can get up there without falling down.
Well, maybe if we rope each other to each other. I don't know. I just want. I need to look into the knapsack, and maybe on the floor
it's a
below
beetle.
it.
It's a beetle tree, so I imagine we can work it out.
Yeah.
That was a great fun on Beatles songs, by the way.
So how are the two of you going about freeing this knapsack?
Well, first I want to look at the area below the tree to see what has fallen down already.
You see that several scraps of paper written in that same kind of hasty shorthand are down here. There are several broken flasks that contain dirt or water taken from the forest. You can also see some ruined books that have fallen into the muddy surface down here. It just looks like the normal, everyday carryings of one of these surveyors. There's little things that you can measure the distance with. There's a compass, little odds and ends like that, including the magnifying glass that shattered when it hit the ground.
So is the bag just hanging by one of its straps?
You see that the strap seems to have been caught, where the buckle, the adjustable buckle, is caught between two parts of the branch, and it is hanging freely, kiltered off to one side, and every time the breeze blows, it blows more out of the bag. Lulu, you also see down here with the other detritus that's fallen from the bag is a bloody bandage with beetles crawling on it. One or both, you imagine, the Arcanist and his stalwart hero companion are injured.
Probably. I'll do a little lick sniff to figure out if it is possible in this musty forest who might have worn this bandage at some time, if they have.
Love it. I love the callback. So go ahead and make me a perception check.
That is a dirty 20.
20, you smell that overpowering floral aroma. You believe this is probably a bandage that was affixed to Lucatus.
I'll hold it up just at with my fingertips. I think Lucatus wore this. He seems injured, but he was still alive.
Brady,
Well, that's
roll me a nature check real quick.
Brady? Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a 3.
A 3. You see that there are beetles on this. There's also some dirt and some moss and some kind of pungent ointment put on it. But past that, it just seems like a regular bloody bandage.
Well, I suppose if you're going to have beetles on your wounds, they may as well be small ones. It's the lesser weevil. So the bag, could it be knocked out of the tree?
You believe it could be. The branches and the tree itself, the two of you are kind of looking at your options here. The tree itself seems very brittle, old, and kind of flaking apart, as old trees are wont to do. Even when a stiff breeze blows by, it kind of sways more than you imagine it should, as parts of it have been raked away near the ground, up about 50 feet. At this branch, 80 feet above you, this wide, flat branch, almost like a beam you would see on a ship. It's so big, flat, and wide. Where this thing is hung, the branch kind of hangs precariously too. Like, the whole tree is long, long dead. And you imagine that had they been on the tree, and this giant insect tried to climb it, there's absolutely no way it could get up there. And you think, as you kind of ponder for a couple minutes, that may have been what transpired, and just the branch snagged this bag. You believe that you could break the branch and drop it. You could break the bag itself, maybe the strap or something else, from down here with your bow, but it would also drop. You could scale the tree and get it without dropping it to the ground. There are many, many options here.
So Brady looks at Lola, says, I don't really fancy climbing a tree full of bugs that likes bloody bandages. Might
You have a point there, and I have the tendency to fall off these things.
maybe the diet is not exclusively vegetarian, is what I'm saying. You know.
Yeah.
So can you catch?
I can try.
Okay. Brady pulls his weathered bow out of his quiver, puts his foot in the middle and strings the bow. And Brady actually has the sharpshooter feat, so hopefully he can shoot the strap and see if Lula can catch it.
So
I move under it, so I will be able.
All right, go ahead and roll me an attack roll, please.
So with my normal bonus, assuming it's a 16.
16 is plenty fine. Go ahead and roll me damage. Are you aiming at the strap or the branch?
Well, since you said it was trapped between two branches, maybe what I'm trying to do is sort of aim between the two branches to see if I can actually...
Like hit the buckle? Okay, so you're targeting the bag. Perfect.
Yeah. Rolled a 6 on the damage die. With my normal modifier, that would be a 9.
9. So, you let loose an arrow, and it hits the strap. And you see the arrow cuts near the buckle, almost through the strap. And it's hanging a little more precariously now. Lulu, can you roll me a d6, please?
Sure.
As more things fall down upon you.
That's a 6.
A 6, you luck out, and kind of fluttering through the breezy mid-morning, another bandage has slipped free from one of the side pouches of this knapsack that's hanging there, and it flutters down and lands on the ground, and almost immediately you see it swarmed by beetles. Start to eat at its little bloody exterior. You can kind of kick it away from you, no problem at all.
Yeah, I will do that for sure.
It hangs precariously, but by just a few threads that connect this buckle. Go ahead and roll me another attack, please.
And also thank you for not shooting down the branch while I'm under it.
Brady draws another arrow and says, "Looks like I almost got it. Maybe a second attempt here. Probably good news. That's really Lucatus's blood, because I don't think he's the type that can fly. So if he's still alive and he's not doing the flying, then that means Hildebrand's probably out here somewhere." And he takes the second shot, and on this one I roll a 24.
You only need 1 point of damage to free the bag, so you fire the last shot, the buckle explodes when you hit it, this wooden buckle, and the bag falls down. Lulu, you have been prepared, you're aware and ready, so go ahead and roll me a dexterity check with advantage, please.
Okay. That is an 11.
An 11 is just enough. You needed a 10 or better. The bag plummets down, and you catch it, When you do so, the bag, obviously centered straight towards you, kind of dumps most of its components right in your face that were hanging ready to fall. You take 1 point of bludgeoning damage, but you have caught the bag and the components for the most part, other than what have hit you and fallen to the ground. The bag, when you catch it, jingles and is very heavy, far heavier than you probably expected. It has 20 sheets of parchment, 3 stoppered inkwells that have not been opened or broken, a map of the area, including Survey Site 801. It has a smaller pocket magnifying glass that is not broken, 12 vials of various liquids and saps that have not ruined what is inside, and Hildebane's personal diary that has a quill in it enclosed on a certain page.
Oh. That is fascinating. No spellbook, but I think this will do. And shall we have a look into the diary? And I immediately open it.
Brody just kind of absently waves if he wants to read some words.
The diary seems relatively new, like it may have been brought out just on this one expedition. It discusses, the first few pages discuss the migratory patterns of the avian creatures through the forest and the mineral contents of various springs here. And some of those findings may interest you, but it's not quite what you're looking for. The last 2 pages, where the quill is positioned, however, read thusly. We awoke only an hour after sundown on our way back to Survey Site 801's northeastern gate, when the presence drew the attention of 2 redwood crawlers. Probably a mating pair, they can become quite territorial near their nests, a trait we wish to take full advantage of, as malicious fauna steer well clear of such groves in an effort to avoid the fate that befell us, the fools we are. Lucatus did his best to drive off the larger of the 2 isopods, which is likely the female, but they would not be turned away despite our combined efforts. When he was quite seriously wounded, we harnessed magical flight to make our escape. Had I not prepared the spell for such an eventuality, I fear we may have met our end in that encampment. We flew for the duration of the magic toward what we know to be the centermost growth of forest here, leaving behind a trail of breadcrumbs should my peers come looking for us. I pray, whatever fates there are, that my Kushi companions, Ambrose and Waffle, made it to safety. They are wise and smart animals. Lucatus fears one or both of the crawlers are still tracking us through the trees, but we rest for now in this old beetle palm. It should prove difficult to scale. The sheer size of these beasts alone would not be supported by the tree. Lucatus's wounds do not seem life-threatening, but he is in quite a bit of pain. I am no doctor of medicine, but I've done what I can. I think we head towards the center of the forest now. It should be more difficult for them to navigate.
Okay. I'm going to assume that Lulu has read that aloud.
You have one of those Gandalf and Lord of the Rings moments where you just read what you were reading.
We cannot get out.
They've broken the gate.
Well,
Now, Waffle.
The Kushi's ears perk, and it waves its very heavily haired tail back and forth, hearing its name from you.
Oh, I knew you didn't look like an amber.
It, smelling the bag and seeing all of these components, kind of redoubles its effort. Starts smelling around the area. until it finally kind of settles on a direction and begins to tug that way.
Okay. Assume and here is going to map.
Yes, we can try to make marks on the map.
When you open the map, you actually see the trail that the Arcanist took and the area surrounding you right now. The redwood trees are marked with a dotted line, redwood forest, with little, side notes from the Arcanist. You see the trail leading back to the survey site. And to the northwest of where you are exactly, you can kind of tell where they've made their camp. He just made a little circle, probably the halfway point of their journey. To the northwest where this trail goes, you see that there is a note in the top right corner that says, Blight? ? With kind of dark shading where the middle of this forest would be. The map itself does not cover that area, but just in the top corner, Blight?
Light.
Sorry, did you say light or blight?
Blight with a B.
Sorry. Take about a 2-minute break here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to take a break, get some water, stretch your legs, use the bathroom.
Yep.
Never apologize for needing to have a life outside of our D&D game.
How dare you?
I'm happy you have a life outside of your D&D game. All right.
Brady, why don't you give our Waffles here a treat for finding the tree so nicely for us?
You read my mind there, Lulu. Just about to pop open the box. Brady will pull out 2 and throws one to Waffle. There's a good boy. And maybe a treat for Brady too, huh?
The two of you enjoy one of these crispy meat-flavored biscuits. The Kushi seems more happy than you've seen it thus far. At first, it was almost as though this creature were terrified and reacting on natural instinct. But you've spent time with it. You've slept with it. You've given it treats. You've said its name. You've given it conciliatory pats. It seems more adventurous now in its demeanor, almost like the two of you. It's more inquisitive and curious and ready to see the next thing. And the two of you are experiencing kind of a bond with this Kushi as you spend more and more time together.
In the redwood part of the forest, is it the same sort of overgrown nature?
So if you can imagine, in the redwood side of the forest, it's more dark than the rest. This large expanse of redwoods kind of pops up like a mountain, but it's completely flat on the ground. Just the trees here grow so massively. The undergrowth is kind of choked out by what these trees do. The roots run deep and wide, and they're so close together, surprisingly close, probably only 60 or 70 feet from one another despite their massive size, that you think had these isopods been any taller from the ground, they couldn't even fit between these trees. So what does grow, vines, leafy foliage, that kind of thing, easy to push aside and step through. The rest of the forest, as we mentioned previously, is almost magically twisted to be difficult for you to navigate. And the closer you get to the center of the forest, the worse that gets, actually. So being in these redwoods is almost a reprieve. So when you see the trail break into the rest of the forest, the two of you probably audibly groan and look at each other because it's less and less hospitable. Luckily, there is a trail crashed through all of it as though someone was on a tractor and just drove straight through the forest. Smaller trees and brush trampled, crushed flat.
Brady, I believe when we return to camp, we should recommend to the High Guards woman that she capture some of these and use them to make paths in the forest.
Yeah, I just remind me when we pass that on that we don't look like we're volunteering to be on a team that ruggles these things.
That is a good idea. Let's write it down when we leave.
Write it in the Arcanist journal. You'll find it later.
Maybe they want to come out here and salt the trail that's already been done.
Oh, that's a good
At least
point.
Brady will reach into one of the nearby trees with his amber gloves and pull out a quarterstaff to use as a walking stick. Take a
So Lulu,
quick
you
look at-
see he's wearing these amber-colored wooden plated gloves. And when he touches the tree, his fingers kind of glide into it like clay, almost. And when he pulls his hand away, this staff pops straight out of the tree. You see the missing section where it should be. Perfectly smooth, perfectly weathered. The bark flakes away very gently in his grip, and he's left with this perfectly made, not ornate, but not overly simple quarterstaff.
That is
I
quite
bet
the
you
talent.
thought you were the only one around here that could do some magic, eh?
I am utterly impressed.
Are the two of you following this carved trail of destruction into the forest?
I guess so. Yeah.
Assuming that's where the dog wants to go, and assuming that's where the map and journal points, then yes.
The
And
Kushi
I
is
thought that's what I heard, but may have heard you wrong.
the Kushi is kind of breathing near the ground and following this trail more or less directly. And just like previously, after you go a couple 100 feet, you see a blue marker in the leaves and the branches overhead. A few more 100 feet, you see another. Eventually, this trail ends very abruptly at a smooth-barked tree that stands like a pillar column 300 feet over your heads, almost perfectly smooth on the outside. The both of you know these are called ironwood trees. They have the hardest bark and the hardest inside of any tree that has ever been grown to your knowledge, even through arcane means. They're exceptionally rare in this place, and are usually only grown by druids or people who spend a long time cultivating the seeds and growing them to adulthood. So it's a little unsettling when you see that this tree, not 30 feet from it, is another, and another, and another, on both sides, forming a half circle as far as you can see. Ironwood trees. The enormous isopod that you've been following that tore through to this spot apparently abandoned its pursuit completely at this ironwood tree. It turns, and this trail of destruction gives way to a more mundane trail, where it kind of picks its way through the trees and crawls over logs and atop little outcroppings, as though it was chasing after something and then abandoned the pursuit completely.
So it's obvious where it's gone off.
It's obvious that it went off in a different direction. However, you
I was
see,
thinking maybe the tree was about to drop on it, but
you see in this ironwood tree, up 300 feet to the nearest branch, the branches of the tree are almost bulbous at the very top. A piece of blue cloth hangs off of it. Beyond this wall of ironwood trees, in this semicircle, the trees twist, the short little branches twist and curl unnaturally. 20 feet further, it seems short and stunted, like all of the life has been muted, turned down. A stone's throw beyond that, all of the vegetation looks completely colorless, monochrome, and withered. Beyond that is flat dirt, ashen gray, that stretches on further. Ankle-tall yellow grass in a ring is all you see of vegetation until you get to that blighted expanse of soil. It's like a bullseye. These enormous, unnatural, perfect trees. Vegetation that looks twisted and strange. Vegetation that looks like it's having the life pulled from it. Yellow grass, and then nothing.
Do you think they went in there?
It's probably 60 miles across. It's a huge circle.
Oh, okay. Okay, I was imagining it smaller, so...
I was imagining a bird's eye view, and I didn't mention it.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So the blue cloth you mentioned, sorry, is it in? It was in the tree in one of the ironwoods.
Mm-hmm. It is
Like
in the
up it?
ironwood tree right above you.
So it looks like someone went up the ironwood tree to put it there. Well, I guess Hildebane might have wanted a better look at this blight of his, because I think he's going on up there. Be handy if we could fly, eh?
That would be wonderful, but I don't know how.
You think, Brady, that this tree is not unscalable? It would just be difficult without a climber's kit. If you wished to do so.
Wish I'd thought of that before I left 801.
The Kushi, still in Lulu's grip, is not pulling overly hard, but it is tugging into this expanse of twisted-looking vegetation. It bays that it has the scent.
It looks like Waffles wants to go in there. Yeah, you're a good boy, and he's going to pat him a little and go behind the ear a little.
With your claws? Oh yeah, it's the best thing.
Well, I didn't come here as no surveyor or naturalist, but even I could tell you that that's not natural what's going on in there.
I agree. I mean, this is concerning, considering it's just also marked as the blight in the map. As far as I'm concerned, that is like, here be dragons, which means don't go there. But, even this giant bug got the message, but I assume... I'm sorry, I talk over you.
Sorry, I lagged out for a second. So Brady just comments, "Oh, I thought you might have had some cousins who was dragons, looking like you do." Oh, you losers look the same. What can I say?
So the two of you stand here for a moment or two, kind of collecting yourselves, and you mention that this creature kind of turned away, but you're not entirely sure that it could fit between these trees. And you look at the tree that you're standing in front of, and you're looking at the trees next to it, and there are very, very subtle, almost like you run your fingernails along a piece of cloth, indentations in this impressively hard bark, as though the creature could not get purchase to climb it. You see that all the vegetation around you is scythed and destroyed like everything else, but these trees are in almost pristine condition, other than those few little blemishes. You think that it abandoned its pursuit because it couldn't get through.
I like these trees a lot more, realizing that none of these beasts can be up there.
Or on the other side of them, for that matter.
That is a very good point.
It
Let's
is such
go
a
there.
good point. I would like the both of you to make perception checks.
It's a 19.
Daryl, you still with us?
It looks like he disconnected.
Sorry, I'm voice connected, but I was lagging out, so I tried dropping the video for a second.
It's okay.
Yeah, sure.
What did you roll on your perception check?
I didn't make one because I didn't hear you ask for it.
Perfectly fine. You brought up such a great point that you and Lulu both kind of focus in and listen. Can you roll me a perception check, please?
I rolled a nat 1.
So you're kind of enamored with everything that's going on and this Kushi, and you're thinking about how dangerous this place could be. You're keeping an ear out for the return of this giant isopod. Lulu, you actually don't hear anything beyond the trees. You don't hear an insect, a bird. You don't hear any of the trappings of a forest beyond these ironwood trees. It's completely still.
Brady, do you hear that?
Hear the nothing, you mean?
There's nothing. I hope not everything dies when it goes beyond this range. I look at the ground. Is there anything, any creepy crawlers or so?
Oh, yeah, everywhere. All over the place.
I'll grab a chunk of them and just toss it beyond the trees and see what's happening.
You kind of peel back a piece of bark on a fallen log and grab a bunch of beetles and worms, toss them in. You see that they land and scuttle around a little bit. You can actually walk to the edge of the tree and throw it into this expanse of kind of ashy-looking dirt. And when they land on it, they kind of meal about a bit, like they don't know where they are or what's happening. And then they come to the foliage and slowly make their way kind of back towards their home. They don't seem hurt, withered, or injured in any way.
Okay, now I feel better. Well, I don't fancy the idea of spending a night within that strange part of the forest, so shall we try to find our targets and hopefully get out of this soon?
Yeah, that would be, I think, ideal. As much as I like that them crawlers can't seem to get over there, I'm not exactly enthusiastic about spending the night in something called a blight.
Yeah. With you
I
there.
say we get in as quickly as we can.
It is just at midday. You've only had to travel a couple of miles since you made camp. So I would imagine you have about 7 to 8 hours until sundown, which is more than plenty of time, you imagine, to cross this thing if need be. When you journey inside, the blighted expanse of land stretches in front of you for miles. When you leave the vegetation behind, you have a clear picture of this oval. This stretches out as far as you can see. You see the little dots of trees off in the far distance, dotting the landscape like the back of a centipede almost, so far away. This oval centers around a jut in the very center, some naturally formed cave of stone and soil. And even from here, with both of your keen visions, you can see smoke gently curling up from the mouth of the cave. Not even a bird flies overhead. It is completely quiet as you make your way deeper and deeper into this expanse. When you get close enough, you see that this jut of stone, this naturally formed cave, is actually in the shape of a massive, toothy maw. It doesn't look natural. It looks made of stone, but twisted by some kind of magic or carved by hands long, long ago to look like the mouth of a beast coming out of the ground. Near the mouth of the cave is a low campfire, and seated with his back against the stony outcropping, you see a half-elf man. Even from 15, 20 feet away, he does not move, does not say or act at all, and you can smell blood on the air. What do you do? What'd you say,
Get
David?
closer.
Get closer?
Is it someone we recognize?
Yes. Since you checked the Arcanist's notes earlier, you do get a sense that this may be Lucatus. Same basic dimensions, same long, kind of pristine-looking hair, but he's spottled in sweat beads, leaned up against the side of this cave, his wound on his thigh is covered in bandages that are turning brown, and the fire is all but dead, just throwing some smoke up into the air. You do not see anyone else, and when you approach, you can get as close as you wish, and this half-elf does not notice you are there.
Well, I'll step directly close to him and try to figure out what kind of wounds he has. Is he still warm?
When you get close enough, you can hear him kind of making these ragged breaths in and out through his clenched teeth. His face is daubed with large beads of sweat, and his oily hair clings to his face. And other than the grunts and hisses of pain, you don't hear him say anything. He doesn't even notice that you're there. You see that his leg has a spear wound straight through it. It's huge, as though someone drove a lance through his thigh. It's very, very bad.
We have the bag from them that had bandages. Are there other supplies? Lulu is proficient with medicine, so he can hopefully find some things.
That is great. Why don't you roll me a medicine check to see if you can get such things from this bag?
I'm actually going to use inspiration, if I may,
Sure.
to roll that. That is an 18 then.
18. So, I'm going to give you the full rundown because that's plenty. Lucatus, before you, is clearly in his late 50s, which is middle-aged for a half-elf, maybe a little younger than middle-aged. And his chestnut hair is very well tended along with his armor. He's missing one sword. The other sword is in his hand, but at his side, limply, just kind of hanging there. His other hand is on his thigh, holding the wound. When you go through the bag, you see that there are ingredients here and other herbs collected from the forest that could be used as a healer's kit. If you would like, you can spend 10 or 15 minutes kind of tending to Lucatus, and he would eventually wake up on his own. Or you can use the ingredients in here to rouse him now and deal with healing him after. You do not see any sign of the Arcanist.
I do not think we should rush things here. He's clearly already on the edge. So unless you disagree, Grady, I would like to first patch him up and make sure that he can come by on his own like his body demands, not like we wish it to happen.
Well, Brady's kind of taking a few steps back. You sure you don't have no disease or nothing? He looks sick.
Well, yeah, he has a huge hole in his leg.
You pull the bandage away, and there's this big wound, It's since stopped bleeding, but it's still very bad and not particularly cleaned at all.
Yeah, if I see the need, I will burn out parts of that even. But try to avoid it, but...
You sure we got time for this? If Hildebane is in there, and he gestures towards the cave.
Well, I don't think... Go ahead, my friend.
Right. Brady was just finishing the thought. Are you sure we got time for this? He's not the one we're after all.
Well, he sort of is, and even though they said it's fine if they are dead, I think they would like them back alive if possible. I don't think the 10-15 minutes that it might take here will make much of a difference. We are hours behind anyway. Sure, I would like to find the Arcanist soon, but I don't think... at least we have one that's still alive here. I mean, imagine how disappointing it is if we leave him to die and the other one is dead already. So, let's...
I love the pragmatism. I love it.
Lizard folk, I'm not quite as...
They're all meat when they're dead. He's not just meat right now. It's perfect.
So Brady unslings his backpack then, and he says, "All right then. You seem to know more about this than I do, but let's try and make him comfortable." And he pulls out the blanket from Hildebrand's bed, and put it over the patient's shoulders. And while he's in there, he'll grab another treat for Waffle and throw it to him and says, "Don't worry, mate. We'll be after him soon."
Waffle kind of gives some sniffs to Lucatus, who's laying here. Through the course of the 10 minutes, you can treat to the wound and do what you can for it, and eventually, Lucatus's eyes open. He raises the sword like a few inches and then gives up. He can't seem to muster that much strength. But also, he seems to recognize the two of you. Though you may not have had dealings with him in the past, you've seen everybody a couple of times. That's just how this camp works. It's not that big. So he blinks a few times and looks down at the leg and leans back. He says, "I'll be lucky if I don't lose it. But I think it's all right. I don't smell death on it yet," he says through his raspy voice. "Hildebane.
Oh.
Is Hildebane back yet?"
No. Where did he go?
He shows his teeth, clearly pissed off. And he says, "He went into that cave." He looks outside at the sun. "Hours ago. He said that he would be back. I tried to make him not go, but I can't catch up to him. I told him to come back at once. That fucking fool," he says. He looks to the leg and rolls it very gently and sees it's not bleeding. And says to Lulu, "Thank you. I need the two of you to do something for me. I need you to go and get Hildebane before he kills himself. And I need you to knock me out. I can't handle the pain."
Well...
"Unless you have healing," he says, and gently touches the wound and grimaces again. "I shouldn't die, but God's damned, it hurts."
I'm afraid I'm not much of a healer beyond of patching people up with my... well, I am sort of a healer, but not of the magical kind which you are clearly thinking about. but I'm pretty sure Pretty can knock you out if he needs to.
Through your course of treating him, you believe that Lucatus, though a very stalwart and well-trained veteran of several wars, you believe he probably has not slept over the course of the night where the two of you rested, and you're pretty sure that he's probably down to, if you had to put a number on it, 15 or so hit points, very, very injured from this. And you don't think that he could keep up with you in his current state if you were to try and follow you into the cave regardless.
Mm.
And that's even
though
past the pain that he's gritting through.
Not more than 15 hit points sounds wonderful to me.
For him, you would think that that's a fourth.
Yeah. I think you should rest here. How complicated is this in there? Do we need Waffles to guide us?
He says, I didn't go in. I collapsed when we got here, and his spell ended. I didn't even want to come in this place. Do you see the ground out there? Ugh, I don't trust it at all.
You need to rest here and not move anymore, and stop fidgeting around. Didn't patch you up so you loosen it up again.
He nods and leans his head back against the wall and just lets out a... Okay.
Okay, maybe we can gather a few things for to rekindle the fire. And Brady, if you wouldn't mind doing that, I will draw a circle of alarm around here so we know if he gets eaten also. No offense, Locatus.
So Brady kind of looks around and says, "A fire then. I don't know that we got much tinder, but see what I can do. But we can always leave in a blanket to be comfortable in. Well, I don't know about knocking him out unless you got some sort of poultice from that pack. I never known a blow upside the head to...
Yeah.
Good for one's constitution, though I'm hardly what you call a cleric of Lathander myself."
Well,
If you wish to render him unconscious, you can do so. You believe it's in your power, especially with him not fighting back and not moving around. Again, hit points is a kind of arbitrary overview of luck and perseverance. With him not fighting back and his head against a stone wall, you can easily knock him unconscious. Or you can tell him to suck it up and stay here in pain. It's completely up to you. There is some random ramshackle wood and limbs here. They don't seem like they're picked especially to burn well, but you can make a kindle of them to reset the fire.
Brady will set about that, and he will let Lou's medical expertise determine whether or not unconsciousness is the best course of action.
What are we doing?
are we all waiting for each other?
You are.
Sorry, I thought you froze again. On my end, anyways.
Will you be rendering him unconscious, leaving him conscious, or what? Also, Lulu, I would like you to take a point of inspiration for the use of your alarm spell. I really like that.
Thank you.
He says, regardless, just
What-
get
what-
Hildebane.
While Brady's putting the fire together, I want to take a look at the cave itself. Does it actually look like it was carved to resemble a maw, or does it look maybe more like it was petrified that way?
Here inside the mouth of the cave, you see that it is clearly stone, and it doesn't look carved by hand or chisel. It looks more shaped over time. The stalagmites kind of hang from the ceiling, looking like broken teeth. And stalactites underneath that were dripped upon have grown up over the years, calcified. It looks like complete happenstance that this thing formed in this way. Otherwise, it would just be a big cavernous cave that stretches down into the soil. But it starts to kind of fiddle with your mind a little bit, looking at it. The idea that this forest is overgrown unnaturally, the formation of this cave unnatural, this blighted expanse unnatural. There's probably some catalyst for all of that here. The cave itself, looking deeper down into it with the sun at your back, you can see the cave is probably 20 feet high and 50 or 60 feet across, maybe further in some places, that slopes downward at a pretty steep angle, down deep, deep into the earth. Dead vines cling from the cave walls and rotted up roots kind of dangle from the pieces of soil where plant life used to be. It doesn't seem like this place was always this blighted ruin, but it does seem like there used to be foliage here. There are little dried branches and things clinging from where shrubs used to be. It seems that the wood made for the fire came from within the cave. Dry and crumbly. But it leads down, deep, deep down, carved through the ground naturally by probably water, you would imagine.
Well, Brady will, again, he looks, the now familiar look on Brady's face, like someone just kicked him below the belt as he reaches into his pack to pull out a torch, which he lights off the fire. Says, well, I guess we better get to it then.
I guess that is a good idea. And Lulu will gently stroke along the leash towards Waffles and cast light on it.
Nice. I like that.
So that we see it also if Waffles get loose. At least he's shining in the night then in the distance.
I love it.
And while we're at it, I'll cast false life on myself.
Okay.
To not get dead that quickly.
Brady, can you please make me a nature check while you're lighting your torch and looking around and your companion is readying himself?
And get a nice even 11.
You see that the walls of this cave seem brittle and crumbly, like maybe it was mud at one point that has since dried that held some expanses of this thing together. You think that a shock or heavy damage would cause a wall to collapse. It's something you should probably keep in mind when you're traveling through this tunnel.
So I'll pass that information on to Lolo. Said, the walls, they don't look that stable. Well, I know what you spell slingers are like, so check your fire, so to speak.
I will try to keep a hold on myself.
And Brady can, rub a thumbnail, and you see that some of the soil and stone here kind of flakes away, proving his point. Lucatus, as you venture deeper into the tunnel, says, "Don't worry. If someone comes, I'll insult him to death. Just get Hildebane." And he kind of laughs to himself with his dry sense of humor.
Oh, you'll be fine.
The passageway, as the two of you venture in with your torch and leash illuminating things, extends 250 feet, sloping downward, steeply the further you go, to the point where you have to pick and choose where you place your feet that you do not slide down further. The ground here is jagged and broken, stones and little pieces of plant life that are long dead, plenty of footholds not to do so. Eventually, it splits into 3 different tunnels: left, middle, and right. Each of the tunnels is smaller than the one you just came from, but still very large. You could fit 2, maybe 3 carts side by side through these tunnels.
So,
Waffles.
Please, one of you. Daryl?
sorry, I thought Lulu was asking Waffle to whether he had the scent, I think, and Brady was going to kind of bend down with his torch and his using his quarterstaff to support him to see if there's anything like footprints or anything like that leads out into one of the tunnels or the other.
Go ahead and roll me a wisdom survival check, please. Lulu, are you trying to goad the Kushi Waffles into tracking the scent further?
Yes, I do.
Make me an animal handling check with advantage due to your relationship with this animal.
Oh, that is good, because the first was a 1. Oh, and the second is a 1 too.
Oh, wow. It is not meant to be. What did you roll for your survival check?
16.
Okay. So, Lulu, you try to urge the Kushi, like you hold the piece of cloth, where is he? Where did he go? The Kushi seems completely frazzled. It's left and right, and you yourself smell multiple fetid, acrid kind of scents down here. And you're imagining that it would take a great deal of time and effort to get this Kushi to find the right smell. However, Brady, you see that there are tracks that lead to the easternmost tunnel and back into the middle tunnel. There are no tracks that lead to the westward tunnel.
So it looks like someone used the eastern tunnel and then came back out,
Mm-hmm.
and then went into the middle one.
Mm-hmm.
So still on the ground, kind of running his fingers over the earth. Brady says, "Well, it looks like they chose the right one, but then they decided it was the wrong one, and they went to it the middle."
Huh. I'm impressed. And Lulu would just stare at you for a moment.
Well, I mean, we could wait, see if he wants to come back this way again, but if we follow him down the middle, we might find him quicker. We go down the east tunnel, we might see what he saw.
Well, to be honest, I don't particularly care to know what he saw there, and if we find him, we can ask him still. So middle tunnel it is?
I think that's good thinking, that is. Let's go straight down the center then.
Right.
The middle tunnel goes forward about 100 feet before sloping greatly upward to the point where you have to almost half-crawl climb up the slope and embankment. The Kushi kind of has to get dragged a bit by the leash to go up such a steep incline. The tunnel ascends up that steep incline 40 feet and immediately levels off flat. You continue down it for another 200, 300 feet. It turns and suddenly steep changes in elevation. The pathway is bisected at this point. 300 feet. This completely smooth tunnel is bisected by what looks to be a stream. That acrid, disgusting, putrid smell that you smelled before, Lulu. It is so dense and overpowering in this tunnel that you have to squint, the both of you squint your eyes against it. It's so powerful and unsettling. 15 feet wide, this tunnel of constantly flowing water cuts through the soil and has eaten away at the stone to the point that you're not even sure how deep it is. Over your head is probably 20 feet, and the tunnel itself is about 30 feet wide, bisected from one side, seeping out of the soil and earth. This water goes all the way across and down into the ground beyond.
He saw this and didn't turn around.
I feel like we walked in the mouth and now we found ourselves in the bowels. Brady will sort of cover his mouth and then but take a look around to see if there's any obvious signs of passage here.
So what you can immediately see, other than this foul-smelling, burbling liquid, is that this entire tunnel is covered in desiccated plant life. Long dead and crumbling all over the place. But it looks like, in its heyday, this place was completely full of lichen and other vegetation, which makes this flaky dust all over. You see, leading up to about a foot away from this burbling stream, the footprints, and you see them on the other side appear 15 feet beyond this stream that cuts through the tunnel, as though through magic the footprints begin again.
Well, it looks like our friend had the wherewithal to fly over this stream, but I don't know what we're going to do about it.
Yeah.
Gesture towards the where he sees the footprints on the other side.
15 feet. That's awfully wide to jump.
Is there anything that a rope could be looped over or anything like that?
The cave seems almost completely smooth, like something burrowed through here a long time ago. You think that you, if you had the materials, could fashion an anchor and make a swing, but you have no way to get up there on the 20-foot ceiling, nothing to lash it to. You would need a piton or some kind of spike to drive into the ceiling.
For me, I bought the explorer pack in the dungeon.
This is, of course, for you to interpret. I'm not sure if it would work or not.
Mm-hmm.
With mold earth, one can cause shapes, colors, or so appear on the dirt and stone.
Mm-hmm.
Could that be enough to make something that could hold a rope, or is that just little extensions? Because the range is 30 feet.
So what you can do, kind of helping you along, with mold earth, you could form a spike. You could form little handholds in the walls to kind of shimmy across and not touch the water. Or you could build some kind of dam given enough time with the loose soil behind you and in front of you to kind of channel this water away and something to walk over. But it would be very time consuming, to do that.
Yeah.
To make the handholds would only take you maybe a minute.
Yeah, I think the handholds are probably the best. Because I don't trust my weight to something I could draw out of the ceiling, to be honest.
Sure.
Particularly because we probably have to carry Ruffles across somehow. Or leave him here and send him back to Locatus. Brady, how good are you with rock climbing?
About as good as the next bloke.
Let's try it. And I'll try to shape the things out.
You get a flattened, dried newt and start waving it around. It doesn't take you very long to make these subtle indentations along. You do know that the walls here are crumbly and old and desiccated. But you think you've bitten enough into the stone, these handholds should work. They will require a DC 10 athletics check to go across.
That sounds doable.
Yeah.
So who's
What
the
about
first one that wants to try?
What about our dog? How we get our dog across?
I think I have an idea on that. We could tie Waffles to a rope. If you climb over there and I'm here, I let loose and you pull the rope in so we have him not hang down into the river.
Okay. Well,
Like a basket.
The 50 foot of rope, you would tie him in the middle and then kind of walk him to the other side and let him down. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brady shrugs his shoulders, cracks his knuckles, and tries to climb across the handholds.
Go ahead and roll me that athletics check, please. DC 10.
Rolled a 9, and my athletics skill is +4, so 13.
Good. The handholds are fine. They're a little gravelly and dusty, but for the most part, the hard part is keeping yourself up high enough to not get into the water and slip off the wall. You get to the other side, plop down. It does not take a lot of effort to throw the rope over, tie the cushy into the middle, string him across, and let him down. That's a great idea. I love it. You do it. So that leaves Lulu. Lulu, go ahead and roll me the athletics check to follow your companions across.
Let's have a look. Do I need to say that I'm using inspiration before I use it? Before I roll?
Nah. You can choose to do it after.
Yeah. I will roll again because that was awful. 5. And the first one was another one. All my
3
inspiration
ones in a
rolls.
row. Wow.
Yeah.
You
All
could have
right.
played a half one.
Ouch.
So coming across, you see Lulu gets to the mid portion, and his clawed hand just digs out a scoop of earth. The other can't hold his weight, and he falls back into the water. Lulu, the water only seems about 4 feet deep. You can stand back up in it, but it burns like a sunburn. It smells like rotten meat and desiccation. It's unnaturally vile, this water you found yourself in. Can you roll me a Constitution saving throw, please?
Do I have to? Oh, that's an
Must.
18.
An 18 is fantastic. You take 3 points of poison damage. You are not poisoned, and you are not swept down into this water. You do, from your perfect vantage point, standing chest deep in this fetid, gross water, see that there are glittering gemstones at your feet.
First of all, thankfully the water eats away at my false life before it gets to my real life. Could I try to sweep up one and still make it out and then still climb up, or would it delay me a lot to try to get one of the gems?
They're pretty small, these gemstones. They're a little bit bigger than pea size, like the size of a lima bean.
Okay.
You can absolutely scoop one of them up or pinch one between your toes or whatever you would like to do as you crawl out of this. They seem to be kind of cascading through the other side of the wall, being swept up in the stream and tossed along out into whatever unfathomable depths lie beyond this tunnel. But you can definitely scoop one up if you wish.
I'll do that, and then I'll try to get out as quick as I can.
You come out of the other side. The Kushi backs away from you from the smell, and I imagine so does your companion Brady. but you can shake it off of your clothes and get it away from you. You feel that acrid kind of searing pain as it leaches into your scales and your skin, but that is just the damage that you took. Eventually, it loses that kind of burn and that acidic feel to it, and you are left just partially wet. And you have a 20 GP gemstone, an emerald gleaming, uncut, worn smooth by the water gemstone.
The one time I don't take mage hand.
From here, you see that the tunnel is the same kind of desiccated, used to be overgrown situation that you just abandoned. It stretches for another 140 feet before it slopes downward. And from the downward slope, you see the gentle glow of magical light from wherever it leads down.
Okay.
Look at that, Waffle. It's just like your leash there.
Yeah.
What do you do? Continue?
I guess so. Look down at myself in dismay and try to wring out parts of my clothing. I probably dropped the stupid leather shirt. I don't have much modesty to protect anyway. That is more to fit in.
It's more for other people. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'll just keep the pants on to not make anyone uncomfortable. Well, let's go ahead.
Just like the slope that you ascended, descending does prove a little difficult, and you do have to fight to kind of lower the Kushi by the leash as it whimpers and stumbles on these little outlets that are carved here. You find yourself deposited into the corner of a titanic circular room that is dimly illuminated by a single brazier in the center that casts a pale green light out to the far edges of this room. The chamber has dozens of small passages that lead out from the central location in all directions, scattered throughout the place, up, down, almost like a beehive all the way around you, passages that lead outward. Most of them, these passages, are barely large enough for maybe a kobold or a halfling to walk through. Not very large at all. But the central one that you came from, you see there is another across the room from the eastern tunnel, and there is a large gaping hole in the ground that drops into a chasm, you don't know how deep, to the west. There are scraps of tapestries hanging from the ceiling in this room. Though it seems made completely out of naturally formed stone, the tapestries are old and well made and glitter of silvered and gold thread in the dim light of this brazier. Dozens of raised pedestals line each wall along, standing empty, completely devoid of whatever they once held and showed off to the world. There are little glittering gold coins scattered all throughout the place. Maybe 5,000 if you collected them all. And that's just the refuse. What's left. Some of them are embedded in the stone, as though the stone itself has grown over them, printed long ago. Ovular-shaped, old. None of them are tarnished. The gold still glitters brilliantly. But little pieces of destroyed detritus make you think there used to be copper coins here too. Little pieces of silver coins that have tarnished and fallen to pieces. But the gold stands the test of time. Along the back wall, furthest away from you, something catches your eye immediately. It is a 100-foot wide black stone disc that stands out from the stone floor, and it shimmers with a faint white light. What catches your eye as well, between you and that stone disk of shimmering light, is the brazier. It's 4 foot tall, the shape in the middle of this 10-foot brazier. A 4 foot tall, ovular shape that looks just like an egg. Sits surrounded on all sides by lapping green flames. In front of the egg, standing ponderously, a pair of copper goggles on his face, stands a half-elven man who turns and sees you there finally when the Kushi barks. He has rips and tears in his blue robe that make it missing all the way up to his waist from the trail of breadcrumbs he's left for you up to this point. Arcanist Hildebane. He cries out across this big cavernous room, "I hope you're friendly. Friendly? Friendly?" It echoes in this giant chamber. The Kushi barks again. Oh!
Sure.
Is that Waffles? You're alive! He trots over, hands on his hips. I'm so happy to see! The Kushi kind of pulls away, and you can let the leash go or not. Follow them, doesn't matter. The Kushi pulls towards this half-elven man. Oh, good boy, good boy. He kisses the top of its head.
A glimpse up at these tapestries or banners. Is that something that one might recognize, be aware of?
It does not take much to recognize. Each tapestry has a tale woven into it of 2 green dragons. The 2 of them dancing facing each other, the 2 of them in flight over a countryside, the 2 of them sitting atop piles of riches. The tapestries each have 2 green dragons woven into them. The dragons themselves are in silver, and their piles of gold and their mighty breath is in gold. The Arcanist sees you pondering up at the tapestries and adjusts his goggles on his face, and he says, I admire them too. I believe them to be tales of the venoms that once lived here. The pair of dragons that used to call this forest home.
And I'm assuming that there is their offspring. I'll point towards the egg.
He turns back and he says, Of that I do not know, but I think so. Dragon's eggs can't stand the test of time, but the venoms were driven from here an age ago. 1,000 years by my remembrance. Hildebane's a very willowy, thin, regal Arcanist type, and when he speaks, he does so with this hand that slides from his waist to his little bit of a paunch belly, and he rubs it kind of absent-mindedly as he's looking around the place. It's as though you walked in to him sitting in a library. He has not a single care in the world for where you are.
So, though Brady is happy to have found Hildebane, he's not quite as distracted by the tapestries and much more distracted by the gold that litters the room. But he does eventually turn to Hildebane and said, I'm sure it's very academically interesting down here, but your man upstairs, he's in a bad way.
He says, Look at us. He should have lived. Did he live? Is he alive?
Yes.
Oh, that is good. That is very good. He is a very stalwart companion. If it weren't for him, I'd have been killed by those redwood crawlers that found us, I fear. Though, maybe it would have been easier to make my escape without him. hard to judge those things.
Oh, your concern is heartwarming.
Lucatus has left me to die on several occasions. I fear it's about time I return the favor. He lets out a sigh, and his face looks way more worried than he's letting on. And he says, I fear that we could have a single moment to change the fate of this place and of our surveying. If you would give me 1 minute of your time, I think that we could make a stride that would take a decade if we were to ignore it. Is 60 seconds worth 10 years of toil in your minds?
Why not? It could be interesting. What do you have in mind?
Lose my life.
He claps his hands on your shoulders, Lulu, and he says, You are a man of science and understanding. And he turns back to the brazier, and he says, I believe the brazier to be magical. I don't have the spell prepared to know what that spell is, but I surmise that this egg should have died a long, long time ago. He says, peer into the liquid here. The two of you can approach the brazier at your leisure or stay as far away from it as you wish. But if you look into this viscous, jelly-like substance that's inside the brazier, you see that there are bones and eggshells littered inside. Little pieces of them, smaller than a wormling, almost. There were other eggs. Something came in here and broke them. But this egg, since it has remained intact, is almost untouched. He walks around, looking at the egg from all sides. He says, I don't see a single crack. I don't see any weathering at all. Something about this brazier, the liquid or the flames, has kept it from being destroyed. This is our venom. He's standing behind the egg compared to the two of your points of view, and he motions his hands as if he's grabbing it. This is why the forest is so overgrown, so inhospitable. If we remove it from the brazier, I believe whatever is sucking the life from this place will go away. And whatever's in the egg, well, I don't know what will happen to it. But this brazier is pulling the life from this place.
Probably sustaining the egg.
Yes! Yes! He screams. He says, You know what I mean. It is siphoning the life away from the forest. It's nearly to the redwood and the ironwood trees. If the rest of the life in this circle dies, the egg dies too, and the forest right along with it. There'll be nothing to stop it from siphoning beyond other than those ironwood trees. I think we should remove the egg. I think we should bring it back to the survey site and come back here in full force to look at this place.
That sounds like a good idea. Have you thought about that black stone shiny thing?
He starts, he hops a little bit when you say it. And he says, Yes, the disc! He turns back to it. I have no clue what this disc is, but it is clearly magical in nature. This place was difficult to get into. I think it might be some kind of doorway, some means of egress from this place. I can't imagine a dragon dwelling here with no escape route other than tunnels. I think this way either lets it in or out, whatever once lived here. We know from the stories that this forest has been home to no fewer than 3 great dragons. The Venoms and Nalgathra, the red worm that once burned this place to the ground. I think this is one of theirs. I don't have the spell to identify it, and I fear that if I were to tamper with it too much, it could be dangerous.
I don't know how to identify anything either. Well, maybe we should try to move it then.
Yes. He's shaking his fists. I do not have any means to do so, but you have brought it with you. We need rope. Rope is all we need. The flames do not burn. He passes his hand along them. They are heatless. They only let away light. I think they're part of whatever spell has kept this egg from moving.
So
Right.
Brady's not taking part of in the conversation, but the obvious curiosity of the two is sort of catching. So he does kind of peer into the brazier to see the liquid and the flames and the remnants of the other eggs. But when Lulu mentions the black discs, particularly when it's mentioned that it might be a doorway of some kind, his eyes kind of flash to it and then back between the other two. I ain't no expert on these things, but eggs can hatch and doors can swing both ways, so to speak. What if whatever's here don't want to be disturbed, and what if whatever's keeping that egg alive is also keeping whatever's inside it from coming out? Should we know what we're dealing with before we start moving things around?
Hildebane grabs hold of his chin and nods, and he says, I have a propensity to take extreme risks when given the opportunity. It is why Lucatus was assigned to me, his calm and even-temperedness. I will not make this decision. He holds his hands up. I leave it to you. But I think that we can make the whole forest safer by destroying the brazier or removing the egg.
I don't want to destroy the brazier, but I like the idea of moving this egg away from there, because whatever has been sucking the life into that egg, that cannot be good for it or for us. I like the idea of it. I think we should.
So, Hildebane, when you take these risks, do you also, shall we say, compensate those who take them along with you?
He kind of waves his hand like such material things don't bother him. Yes, of course. I can scrounge together 1,500 gold pieces. That's a kingly fucking reward, the both of you would know.
Brady said, well, I don't know that the bloke upstairs would like it, but for that price, I'm your man.
Oh, I am interested anyway, and if this does not kill us all, I would hope to maybe be allowed a glimpse at your own, maybe not spellbook, but maybe we could have some sort of exchange.
He holds his robe near the chest open, and you see that he's wearing a sling, almost like a gunslinger would, with his spellbook tucked under his arm. And he says, we can share of spell and story. I never hide my own magical oddities. Isn't that right, Walt?
That's not just a wonderful idea, that's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
Okay. So, since you are following his lead, the two of you can assist him in stringing together loops from rope and cinching them around this egg. The brazier itself extends 10 feet from the egg in all directions with this heatless green flame. Can the three of you, including Hildebane, please roll athletics check? This is DC 10, not very hard at all.
It's a 19 for Brady.
It's a 21 for Lulu.
Only two of you needed to make it. Hildebane rolled a 3, -1 is a 2. So the brazier, the egg lifts from this viscous substance in the brazier up a foot, and then he loses his grip. The two of you pull taut your own ends and keep it suspended until you lower it away from the brazier. When you do, and the egg has left the liquid and left the brazier, its completely white, mottled-looking shell begins to turn green and look almost mossy as this gentle, magical moss kind of overtakes its entire exterior. If you touch it, the two of you can feel this gentle, radiating heat come back to it. This life, this spark begins to reemerge in this egg. The brazier burbles, and the liquid inside pours out and attacks Hildebane. Please roll initiative. Ah! He screams as he takes a big step backwards.
17 for Brady, who will be stringing his bow as he sees the moss grow.
That's perfectly fine. Sorry, Brady got a 17?
Yeah.
Brady, you will be the first to act. So you see this glowing ooze, large in size, that still has these bits of bone and shell embedded in it, crawls out like pancake batter almost onto the ground and begins to reach out with these pseudopods towards your Arcanist companion. You're on the other side of the brazier, probably 20 feet away. What do you do?
So Brady will do what he's been trained to do. He'll string an arrow and take a shot at whatever would best pass for the head of creature.
Give it a shot.
And I'm going to use the sharpshooter ability. So take the -5 for the +10. And because he's in. Because the ooze or whatever it is in combat with Hildebane, could I get a sneak attack on this?
Sure.
So the roll ends up at 10. So
10 still hits.
oh, nice.
It's a giant slime. It's not very dexterous at all.
Max damage. So 24 damage.
A very sizable hit. So your arrow
27 damage. Forgot the modifier.
Your arrow sticks into this thing and it warbles and makes this almost cry. And you see that the flames remain in the brazier, heatless, but this thing was producing all of the light in this room as it's kind of pushing its way towards Hildebane. It looks like your attack hurt it gravely. You see parts of it begin to leak out onto the ground that glows brightly, and everywhere that this liquid that's trapped inside it leaks out, vegetation grows. All the little brambles that have been sucked away all of their life and desiccated turn back to life and grow over top of all these little things everywhere this blood leaks. Hildebane, having no spell slots left, turns, disengages, and runs. And as he runs, he whistles, and his Kushi follows him. And he says, "Kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it," as he's running away. That brings us to Lulu.
Well, great that I brought a spell with poison damage. That's probably useless. So I'm going to put my hands together and tear them apart and cast a simple firebolt at the thing.
Very good. Go ahead and roll your damage, or roll your attack.
Yeah, no. That's a 6.
A 6 does miss. It blasts into the stone next to this thing as it amorphously kind of turns towards Hildebane. It warbles and moves the 10 feet and launches out this ball of itself, this acrid little orb of ooze towards you, Brady, since you dealt it so much damage. It throws it straight over the brazier right towards your face. Does a 15 hit?
Just.
I was afraid it was not going to do anything at all. You take 3 points of bludgeoning damage and 9 points of acid damage. This orb sticks to you and wraps around your shoulder, and you feel it sizzling through your clothes and making this acrid, disgusting smell. But it can only move 10 feet. It's crawled partially up the brazier back towards the two of you since Hildebane has moved 30 feet away from it. It warbles as part of the egg that's trapped inside it pops over the brazier. And we come back to you, Brady.
So, Brady, I'm clearly seriously damaged by this, not enjoying the smell at all either. And he will he'll run back his full movement of 30 feet as he draws an arrow, and then as he reaches sort of an additional 30 feet away, turns around and fires another arrow, and I'll make it another sharpshooter power attack here.
Give it a shot.
Seems to be low AC, so that's good. This time it's an 18 to hit.
Hits.
And I take it no sneak attack this time because it's not engaged with anything.
Nope.
So
You would have no sneak attack.
So 18.
A sizable hit regardless. Hildebane is going to follow your suit, Lulu, and he's going to turn his hand and twist his fingers, and when he does, a lance of cold fires out at this creature. And he manages to hit it and do 1 point of cold damage. It's not his fault. The dice hate him. And he says, "Damn it! Cold!" Lulu, it is your turn.
I'm backing up a little bit, just enough that when the this thing wobbles towards me, it can't reach me within, so probably 20 feet away or so.
Okay.
But as Brady already looks pretty beaten up, I'll try to be the most obvious target next. We'll see how that... And another 6 as I hit my firebolt towards it. This is depressing.
Daryl, you can use your inspiration and give it to Lulu to re-roll the attack roll.
Just to say, can I give my inspiration to Lulu for this attack?
Absolutely. Re-roll your attack roll, Lulu.
Thank you. Oh, that is nicer. That's a 23.
Yeah, that hits for sure.
That is 4 fire damage. Not
Lulu?
overly impressive.
What does it look like when you kill this glowing ooze? It had 3 hit points.
probably going to hit in the middle and then frizzle out, like if you drop a match into magnesium or so, and it lights in the middle and then flares out.
You throw this mote of fire at it, and it hits it, and it bubbles for a moment, almost like boiling water, and then it bursts apart. And when it does, the flames from your firebolt, and its blood splashes all over the floor, the brazier, and part of it onto your friend Brady. The bones clitter to the ground, and everywhere this blood touches, immediately, even on bare stone, grass and moss and vines begin to grow. Can you roll me a D8, please, Martin?
D8 for sure. That's a 2.
Brady, you regain 2 hit points. This liquid that hits you, it feels very strange and warm and odd at first, but then you feel that soothing little bit of relief from the burn on your shoulder as it seeps away and stops glowing.
So Brady's like ready to strip his armor off because he's thinking more of this awful stuff has hit him, but then he's, oh, that don't make no sense. That one actually felt kind of good.
This thin, water-like liquid seems to make everything blossom and glow and grow that it touches. But that viscous outside is still smoldering and burning, stuck like tar to the edge of the brazier from where Lulu's spell destroyed it. It begins to eat at the metal ever so gently. Not enough to eat through the brazier in its entirety, but clearly it was acrid and terrible. The two of you see the egg, still near Brady's feet, has grown little branches that intertwine it, and little flowers begin to grow at the tip-top of this egg. Hildebane approaches the both of you. "Are you all right? Are you okay, Brady?" he says, knowing your name and your reputation. You didn't even have to introduce yourself.
Well, I've seen better days, but I'll survive. I thought you said this was going to make the forest safer. Things are growing more than ever here now.
He touches some of the moss and rubs it in his fingers, and he says, "Such life. What does it mean?" he says. And he looks around and sees the egg overgrowing. "It was a green dragon's egg. We were right," he says to Lulu. "Whatever that brazier did, it must have been pulling life from the forest to keep this thing alive, suspended almost. Suspended. Like the Eastern Tunnel. Did you see the field there?"
No, we decided to ask you about it.
Yeah.
He says, "I saw a field of arcane magic, suspending a corpse of a raider or something, but magic suspension in that tunnel, a trap that was triggered. Same thing here, suspension. It wasn't trying to birth or hatch the egg, it was trying to keep it suspended here. This is good news. This is great news." The two of
Well,
you...
you say hatch now.
What'd you say, Daryl?
Brady's saying, "Are you saying it's going to hatch now?"
I think so. It still seems in its infancy. Green dragon's eggs, to the best of my knowledge, they shed the moss and the twigs before hatching. It's still got years of gestation. But that's not a bad thing, is it? A green dragon? In the right hands? Yes. Anyway,
I've heard definitively that green dragons do not necessarily have an evil alignment.
Yep. Nothing in D&D necessarily has an evil alignment. The two of you eventually, since we're going a little long and I don't want to keep you both forever, eventually you calm the Arcanist, who asks you to help him carry this egg. As you return through the same passage that you took before, you see that the vegetation is starting to grow. But it's not thorny and angular. It's just plush lichen, moss in this area. No acidity or acrid nature. It's grown so much so rapidly down here that it's choking the water from leaking across the passageway. And you can walk over safely. Lulu, if you so wish, you can collect the other 6 20 GP emeralds as you go by.
Just about to ask for it.
I definitely wish to do so, but I give 3 of the 6 to Brady.
Very good. You get all the way back out to the entrance of the cave. You see Lucatus is still there. He's calmed a bit. It seems that he's finally recuperated enough of his blood that he's eating, actually, from his own pack, eating some trail rations that he has. The Kushi waffles goes to him and begins to lick his wound and his face happily, and he says, "Get off me, you damned animal!" and shoves at it, but it refuses. He sees the egg being carried between the 3 of you on a piece of cloth, and his eye raises his eyebrow. "All right. I think I know what made Hildebane stay down there." He says, "But look. This blasted ruin, this expanse of ashen gray soil, you begin to see little pea veins growing up, little vines and flowers. Sprinkled throughout, little dots of green and vegetation where there was once only ruined soil." And Hildebane says, "This is very, very good." And that's where we're going to end our session, you two.
Yeah. This was a lot of fun. This was fantastic.
I'm very glad that you enjoyed it. You managed to avoid all of the other fights that would chip away at your health. Poisonous snakes, giant wolf spiders. You made so many very good and informed decisions. I'm very, very happy. You did very well.
I put together a defensive wizard and I lost 1 hit point. I had a false life. He's an abjuration mage. I was waiting for the arcane ward to pop up, but it didn't even get to that.
I know for a fact I ran a game for an abjuration wizard up to level 17. I hated him. Because it would be like a mountain falls on you. I cast 1 spell and have all of my hit points. I hate you. A lich cast disintegrate. Counterspell. Oh, I hated it.
A regular campaign, we've got somebody who's built their characters what they call the note mage. So
I've heard about
basically everything that happens, it's a nope. I got something for that. So, but this is a lot of fun. I know I'm not a world beater as a player or anything, but I've been looking forward to this all week, and really great adventure and a lot of fun. And yeah, I figured it was probably about 50-50 whether we get into a fight or not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I like for low-level adventures to have the threat of combat, but ways around it. You made so many great choices that would have, like, stumbling into a nest of 3 giant wolf spiders would have been absolutely terrible for 2 players. But I left that door open, and you chose to camp. And you rolled high enough that no poisonous snake showed up. It was great. You did very, very well. And we hit almost 3 hours exactly on the button for my recording. I would love for the both of you to keep an eye out moving forward. Keep these characters and their gold pieces. You would each get 750, by the way. He stays true to his word. Gives you 750 in addition to what you got for the adventure. I would love to pick these two characters up at a later date for another Patreon game if you want to be a part of it, and keep growing like this roster of patrons over the course of however long we do this. Thank you, anyone that watches or listens to this, and I huge thank you to both Martin and Daryl. You were both fantastic. Thank you for coming and thank you for playing. We're sorry that CA could not be here. He mistook his time zones and all this. This is not going like publicly on YouTube. This is just for you guys to share with your friends and our other patrons to make this a little community thing that we can always look back on. I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you if you were watching. Martin, Daryl, thank you so very much.